Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing my spoiler-filled review of The Rise of Skywalker. So if you have not seen the movie yet, please stop this video right now because I will be going through the whole of the movie, my thoughts and opinions on it, filled with spoilers. So do not spoil it yourself. Do not spoil it yourself. Didn't do that on purpose. I have seen it 2 times and I'm just gathering all of my thoughts. I enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed the film. I definitely think that it was geared towards fans and nostalgia for the whole of the saga. Now, that being said, I do think that some things were definitely rushed in this movie, and because of that, there were some problems because it had to be pushed and rushed quite so much. So let's go ahead and get into it, my review of The Rise of Skywalker. So we immediately start off this movie after the crawl with Kylo Ren kicking some butt, killing a bunch of people on what I'm hearing was Mustafar. And he is on his way to Exegol, which is like the Sith planet, the Sith lair, if you will. And it looks as if, to me, he found a holocron, but apparently it's not a holocron, it is a Sith wayfinder. Whatever. New tech, new words, look like a damn holocron to me. And bam, the Emperor is back, just like that, like 2 seconds into the movie. Palpatine is back, Kylo Ren is going to see him, and it's not that I don't like the idea of Ian McDiarmid being back, because I do think that it helps tie the whole saga together, it being, you know, Palpatine based and whatnot, but I do feel like this is rushed. This is probably the biggest thing that was rushed and pushed in this movie. It would have greatly helped if we would have had some sort of Palpatine hints in The Last Jedi, but because that movie went in such a different direction, we had no preparation whatsoever to the Emperor being back. It's just bam, the start of the movie, here he is. He's been pulling the strings this whole time. By the way, Kylo Ren, Snoke, I made him. He's like in a jar you just walked by. And also, the Vader voice you've been hearing, yeah, that was me too. So I do have a little bit of the flow of things, issues with how quick they had to push that upon the viewer because there was no prep for the Emperor whatsoever. Now, I do not dislike The Last Jedi as much as other Star Wars fans do. However, after seeing this one, I can see how I dislike it a little bit more, or some of the things that they decided to do with that film, and how just in general this sequel trilogy is not going to flow as well together because of the different steps they did in Last Jedi. It's very obvious when you look at these 3 films that Disney had no plan going into this, and I feel like that is a mistake. Now, I know that George Lucas didn't really have a plan. He got very lucky with the originals, but then there was missteps as well, you know, like certain sibling kisses like we try to pretend didn't happen. So I feel like Disney should have known better, should have had a plan set in place from day one, and they clearly didn't, because you look at Force Awakens and it's like JJ's Abrams' vision, and then you go to Last Jedi with Rian Johnson's vision, which went like very different course, and now with The Rise of Skywalker, it's back to JJ, and he's trying to continue what he started with Force Awakens. So it should have been one of 2 ways. They should have let JJ Abrams do all 3, and I think that the storylines would have flown together much better. A lot of people don't care for the mass amount of nostalgia that JJ Abrams offers, which he did do in Force Awakens and now in The Rise of Skywalker. So much of this movie was for fans and references back to the end of to the whole of the series, but that makes sense to me because it is the end of the series. But Rian Johnson went a completely different way. So it's like Disney needed to set what course they were going to do instead of jumping back and forth. And so that hurts The Rise of Skywalker. Even though it's like its own movie, you have to look back at the other 2 and the way that Disney laid out things, it hurts this last film. And because it's back to JJ Abrams in this movie, a lot of things felt rushed, like he had to fix or alter the course on a lot of different storylines, characters, etc. And so the beginning of this movie, as I've said, felt very pushed and rushed, like we have to get the viewer to know this, this, and this, because we didn't tell them that in The Last Jedi. So the beginning of this movie slot is more of a really quick catch-up for the viewer when it could have been hinted at or slowly progressed to in the previous 2 movies. And then similar to Force Awakens, we're kind of back on the storyline of who is she? We're questioning Rey, and she's not who you think she is or who you assume she is. Palpatine tells Kylo Ren, and he asks, who is she? So we're back to that question of who is Rey, because now we're setting it up for, no, she's not a nobody, she's actually somebody. Then we jump to the Falcon with Chewie, Poe, and Finn playing the holo chess, and there's a lot of great interaction between the characters, joking around that either Chewie cheats or, you know, of course he's gonna beat us, he's X amount years old. And they are on a mission to get some data and information that is actually coming from a spy within the First Order. So it's big deal. This is the mission that they are on. They get the information. You get to see Finn back in the gunner in the Falcon, and he is much more professional at it now when you compare him to just learning in Force Awakens. So you can definitely see a bit of that character progression there. Poe is piloting the Falcon. There's a lot of different characters that get to pilot the Millennium Falcon in this last movie. I will say for the new characters, this is probably my favorite Poe film. I really enjoy his character in this and how Oscar plays it. He's just got a lot of moments that I really enjoy throughout this film, and he also gets to introduce lightspeed skipping in the Falcon at the start of this movie. Then we go to Rey floating and meditating with some rocks, trying to contact the Jedi, the history of the Jedi, and she's like, be with me, and they're not with her, and she kind of falls down and tumbles, and then we get the first shot of Leia. Now, you probably know, if you know me, that Leia's part in this movie was something that I was extremely anxious about. I was very nervous with how they would do it when they didn't have Carrie anymore. This movie was supposed to be such a Leia dedicated film, and then when Carrie passed away, it was totally like, what can we do? And so the first shot of her, of pieces from Force Awakens and footage and everything, I have to say they did a fantastic job with writing the script, with what footage they had of Carrie, with making it relevant to The Rise of Skywalker. It didn't feel like it was leftover chunks from Force Awakens, so I have to give them props. I'm very pleased with what they did. I don't think it ruined the character. I was very scared. This is like my favorite character of all time. I was nervous, but I think that they did a really good job with what they were given, and you got to have Leia's character again with Carrie's performance. So yes. So in this, Leia is now training Rey, which I think is really cool. And Rey is just, you know, she doesn't think she's ready for Luke's lightsaber, and then, you know, she goes to run the course that they've set near this Resistance base. So Rey goes about running the training course, and she's even training with that training remote that Luke practiced with in A New Hope. There are a lot of tiebacks to the originals and even to the prequels and whatnot in this film. We are definitely not letting the past die in this movie. So Rey goes about training, and then during that time she has a Force connection with Kylo Ren. And of course he is asking her to join him and, you know, take his hand, all of that. So they have carried that on from The Last Jedi. A lot of people were saying that they were just going to completely ignore the Last Jedi altogether. But they have carried over their Force connection and their Force ability together into The Rise of Skywalker, which I'm fine with. I think that that's a really interesting take on the Force and their specific connection, so I'm totally fine with that, and how it's used in this movie specifically. So the Falcon returns with Chewie, Finn, and Poe, and Rey is kind of giving them shit for screwing up the Falcon, and Poe gives her crap for a tree fell over on BB-8 and everything, and they have kind of these great character interactions that are very funny, and, you know, she's like, you know what you are? You're a difficult man. You're a very difficult man, and I love the new cast. I do really like them. I'm a fan of all of them. I think they're great actors. I think they bring these characters to life, so it was great to see them in their final little trilogy bit, if you will. Chewie also rats on Poe that he was lightspeed skipping, and Rey freaks out a little bit. Poe is also very upset with her that she is there training at the base through the Force when he thinks that she would be better served like out on a mission with them, and Finn kind of agrees with him. So the information that is given through the spy is basically like, Emperor Palpatine is back. And once more, it's just like, bam, he's back. By the way, let's let the Resistance know. It's like very, very rushed. in this movie. And of course, like, the Resistance is like, how is that possible? You actually get to see Admiral Akbar's son, and he's like, that cannot be true, the Emperor's dead. But this is like the final order is what the spy says. And literally the only bits of information that we get for how the hell Palpatine survived or like how he came back was he does mention some lines from Sith, like, you know, unnatural, like dark side and like all of that jazz. And then the damn Hobbit dude, Dominic Monaghan, mentions that the dark ways of the Sith and cloning and all that. So they briefly add in these little bits that make you think like, okay, that's how Palpatine survived, or that's how he came back, because we had no reference to him in the last two movies. So they had to rush it in real quick so we had some sort of idea on how he didn't die when Vader threw him down the damn shaft. From that information, Rey actually goes back to the Jedi texts and is able to find information that Luke had kind of noted about Exegol, and she wants to go, and Leia's not really for it, but Rey's gonna do it anyway because she basically says it's what you would do. So we briefly see Rose throughout the base and through some of the battle on this. Nothing like the last movie, which is kind of, you know, hit or miss. She got a lot of hate online, which is a bunch of bullshit, but it would have been nice to see her character written a little bit differently, because that was kind of some of the trouble with her last time. But she's not going on the trio trip, as I'm calling it. She's staying behind to look at some of the Star Destroyer technology in case they are able to find Exegol, like maybe she can know how to work the technology or equipment. And then the new trio and gang are off, if you will. I'm so glad that they got to have more screen time together. I think that was a big complaint for me and for others, that the last two movies, like, everybody was all separated, so you didn't get to see, like, people together. So on the trip, you got Poe, Finn, Rey, Chewbacca, BB-8, and C-3PO. Kylo Ren does have his helmet refixed, and there's like red lines and everything across it because, okay, I personally think they did it to sell different toys, but that's just me. So he has his mask fixed, and we get more of the Knights of Ren in this movie. However, once more, this is something that was rushed. We get a little bit of mention of them, and then I don't think they mentioned them at all in Last Jedi, correct me if I'm wrong, and then they're back now, and it's like, okay, they're kind of cool, they look kind of cool, but there was no real specific place for them. They could have just been stormtroopers in my mind. It was like, okay, whatever, they look kind of cool, but not much to go on with the Knights of Ren. It was just a little rushed. And Kylo Ren does go on a grandfather choking spree. He actually chokes a guy up and up against the ceiling in like a, you know, First Order board meeting of sorts, which is super fun. So the new trio and group head to a new and more desert planet called Pasana. I'm sorry, I say the new trio because the trio to me will always be Han, Luke, and Leia, so I have to update it for Finn, Poe, and Rey and group, so the new trio. And when they get to this planet, there is a special festival being held during and where they exactly have to go. So Poe actually has some funny lines like, you know, there's always First Order in these crowds, keep your head down, looking at you, Chewie, type of situation, and Chewie kind of like ducks down, if you will. This scene and shots is another great example about how these sequel movies do a great job at merging practical effect and CGI. It's not all CGI, and it's not overdone in any sort of way. Some of the creatures that you see look really cool with like masks and puppets and everything, and they blend in perfectly with the live actors' interaction. There's a part during this little festival where a little girl walks up to Rey and gives her a necklace, and you know, it looks like this alien creature is giving Rey this necklace because it's the use of like practical effects, and it looks really good. The little girl wants to know what Rey's last name is, and she says she doesn't have one, she's just Rey. And while they're at this festival, she has a Force connection with Kylo Ren. And this is one of the good parts, I feel like, during their Force connection-ness, because he actually grabs that necklace that the little girl just put on her, and he's able to track where she is. And I think that that's a really interesting concept, like, not just like, oh, feel it in the Force and I'll figure out where she is. Like, no, they grabbed a piece of it, and immediately Rey is like, oh shit, he's gonna figure out where we are. We have to go, like, now. And they're getting ready to leave, and a stormtrooper stops them, and then a masked man stops the stormtrooper and grabs the group. And who is it? It's Lando, of course. I was very pleased to see Billy D. Williams back. Of course, I had seen him in the trailers, but it was great to see him back. I'll take all the childhood nostalgia. I'll take it all, I will. And he also gets the line during this bit, I've got a bad feeling about this. They're basically telling him that they're looking for this Jedi Hunter's ship, and Lando says that he and Luke went looking for this ship and this area years ago, so they're in the right spot. And as Rey is leaving, she tries to kind of recruit Lando, like, you know, Leia needs pilots, and he tries to tell her that his flying days are over, but, you know, to give Leia his love. And it's like, bro, her husband, like, just died 2 seconds ago. Slow your roll there, Mr. Calrissian. So the group is running towards some platforms that, as I had said in a previous trailer review, gives me Return of the Jedi vibes from Tatooine. It really looks like that, and there's kind of a bit of a sand chase going on, and the stormtroopers now can fly up in the air with like jetpacks. And there's some really good interaction and humor between the characters where they're like, they fly now? They fly now? They fly now, and it's really great delivery, and the humor and lines in this movie are very like subtle humor. They're not like in your face like you have to laugh, and I think that's really good writing and then really great delivery on the actor's part. So after this little chase, they like land in sinking sand, which I'm sure Anakin would love. And Finn is trying to tell Rey something, and a lot of people think he's trying to tell her, I love you before we die, but others think that that was the moment where he was trying to tell her that he's force sensitive. And J.J. Abrams has kind of confirmed this, so that's an interesting take on that moment there. So back on the Resistance base, Snap Wexley is trying to give Leia an update, and it's not coming back very good. They haven't heard from the Falcon, and, you know, little bits of more humor where Leia's like, you know, could you try and be more positive? And he's just like, oh yeah, it's gonna be fine. It's great. We're super positive, you know, General, we're good. And it's a couple eye rolls, but it's still very comical in its delivery. So the trio on Pasana sink down into the sand, and it's very Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone to me, like when they're sinking down into the Devil's Snare and then they like end up in like tunnels. There's a lot of different movie references in this movie. I don't know if that was intentional, if it's just because I'm a huge movie buff or what it is, but I was making different movie connections like throughout the whole of this film, and that one reminded me of Harry Potter. So down in those tunnels, Rey actually pops on her lightsaber to use as a flashlight, and, you know, Poe, being so cool, pops on his flashlight. Which is really funny, but at the same time, like, what Star Wars fan hasn't used a flashlight as a lightsaber before? Like, come on, Poe, we totally feel you there. So as they're walking through the tunnels, Rey actually finds like a dagger, and immediately after she picks it up, she can like feel the bad juju on it. Very bad and horrible things have happened with this knife and or dagger. It has some Sith writing on it, and 3PO can read it and understand it, but Senate law that has been programmed into him forbids him from like speaking it or translating it for others, which kind of fucks them over. So as they are going more and more into the tunnels, they're kind of thinking that this Jedi Hunter never made it out of the tunnels, and that is confirmed when they find his bones. Now, the whole tunnel scene here is very Goonies to me, okay? It reminds me so much of the kids going through the tunnels in Goonies and finding Chester Cobblepot's body. It's like, it just screams Goonies to me. So they were already kind of worried of what had made these tunnels, and then a big serpent or Harry Potter basilisk or whatever you want to call it, big old snake comes up, and instead of like firing on it, Rey takes a different approach. I will say that the way that 3PO is like screaming serpent reminds me of a scene from Alice in Wonderland. I don't know why, but as I said, so many movie references in my brain.
Serpent! Serpent! Oh, but please, please! Both of you, shoot, shoot! Go away, serpent! Serpent! But I'm not a serpent!
So Rey goes towards the creature and kind of does an Ezra move. Ezra is from Rebels TV show, if you do not know that reference. He's got a thing with animals. So she calms the snake down and actually uses force healing to heal its wound, which was introduced recently in The Mandalorian, and there's a whole bunch of force healing in this movie. It's the cool thing to do, kids. So up top on that planet, the Knights of Ren have arrived. Okay. Bad guys, I gotcha. They just didn't do anything for me, sorry. And then the group finds the Jedi Hunter's ship, and they're trying to climb up to it, while Rey is starting to sense something and actually goes back down into the sand and tells Finn that she will catch up. And she's starting to feel Kylo Ren arriving, basically. And then in a little bit of time, after they like go inside the ship, Finn actually asks Chewie if he will go after Rey and tell her that they have to go, all while the Knights of Ren are watching. And this is the scene from that first trailer. This scene actually got me excited for this movie and really pumped for it. And it's like Rey getting ready and standing there, breathing hard, kind of getting into a meditative state. And you can see Kylo Ren's ship going across the sand, coming in, and she does the huge flip over it. And as I hoped and wished, the lightsaber cuts into the ship and like kind of tears it apart, and it goes crash, boom, bang, and blows up. But of course, Kylo Ren doesn't die because he walks out the damn fire like that was nothing, I'm totally fine type of situation. But it was still an awesome part, and I remember that from the trailer, and so it was just as cool in the actual film. So during this, Finn is actually seen that Chewbacca was kidnapped and taken by the Knights of Ren and the Stormtroopers and put on a shuttle. So he screams to Rey that they have Chewie, and she basically reaches out her hand and is trying to bring the shuttle back down. At this time over here, Kylo Ren puts his arm out, and they're kind of having a Force tug of war over the shuttle. And let me just tell you, this was making me so nervous, and for good reason. This was making me very anxious, and I'm like, oh my god, and they're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then it happens. The Force lightning comes out of Rey's fingertips. Very Emperor Palpatine, but we'll get to that later. So the Force lightning comes out, and the shuttle blows up. And of course, she screams Chewie, Finn screams Chewie, and I'm like, are you serious? Did we really just kill Chewbacca? I just got a hug from Chewbacca. Please don't do this to me. Did we really just kill Chewie? I didn't even think of that as a possibility going into this movie. I thought maybe R2 or 3PO, but I didn't even think about Chewie. So I had a moment while Chewie died. So they are thinking that Chewie is lost, the dagger with the inscription is lost, and they go off to hide in an asteroid field. Very Empire Strikes Back. All the nostalgia with this movie. But luckily, Chewie was on a different shuttle and goes up and like screams at Hux, and it's all a very good moment for me because Chewie didn't die. While they're hiding, Finn and Rey kind of have a little bit of a heart-to-heart about a vision that she had and how it wasn't just Kylo Ren on the throne, but she was on the throne as well. And she's feeling very horrible that her power just killed Chewbacca, and you know, she's not feeling good about herself. Not feeling good vibes, if you will. What else happens on this ship? BB-8 finds another little saddle-abused droid that will be important later. And 3PO lets them know that he actually has the writing memorized in his databanks or whatnot. He just can't read it out loud. And Poe actually knows someone that could potentially crack a droid's code and like open up his brain there, and so they're going to go to Kijimi. Once they get to Kijimi, they are introduced to Zorii, who is played by Keri Russell, and she actually never takes her mask off except for one little bit with her eyes, which look gorgeous, but it is a little surprising that she never took the mask off. And Poe is basically in some deep shit because he used to run Spice with her, and he kind of screwed her over to leave for the Resistance. So she thinks about like turning them in and everything, and Finn and Rey are like, you used to run Spice? And he's like, you used to be a stormtrooper, you used to be a scavenger, we could do this all day. Just more good little humor and interaction between the new trio that I enjoyed. And the girls kind of have a little bit of a fight where Zorii and Rey go head to head with bow staff, and then Rey uses the lightsaber, you know, to talk her into not turning them in. And they kind of have like a mutual respect for each other that I was totally liking. So Zorii is going to take them in through a bar to get to Babu, who is going to help with 3PO's head. But as they walk through the bar, they walk through the most brilliant composer ever. John Williams has a cameo in this movie, so they walk by him. At some point during this, Hux is telling Kylo Ren that they located where Rey is and that she's in this village, and should we blow it up? Because that's what Hux really likes to do. And Kylo Ren just kind of like points at him. Very Han Solo's child points at him. Watch Empire, he does it like a million different times. Is a Solo child right there. So Babu, cute little dude, is going to help with 3PO's memory and getting the translation that they need, which, by the way, Babu is voiced by Shirley Henderson. Moaning Myrtle. Are you a Harry Potter fan? Because Moaning Myrtle does the voice of Babu. That's hilarious to me. But yes, to get the information that they need out of 3PO, they actually have to wipe his mind. And it's kind of a bit of an emotional arc for 3PO because like Rey has a moment with him where she's like, you know the odds better than anyone, which is perfect for 3PO, and he understands that they have to do this or it will all be for nothing. So it's a really good 3PO storyline and arc in this, like him taking a last look at my friends. It's a very good little moment for 3PO there. However, let's remember that this is not the first time that 3PO's mind has been wiped. Bail Organa has his mind wiped after Revenge of the Sith, so he can't remember about Luke and Leia and everything, but this would be a little bit more emotional because he would forget about, you know, the original series. He wouldn't know who Han, Luke, and Leia are, or any of that stuff, so it's a little bit more of an emotional moment. So 3PO wakes up with like red eyes and like talking like a Sith and everything, and it's talking about how the other Wayfinder is on one of the moons of Endor, and Finn is like, where the last war ended? And I'm like, yes! Give me the nostalgia, give me the Return of the Jedi, it's my favorite movie, yes, Endor. Yes, go to Endor. So as they're finishing up with 3PO, and he's all like, I am C-3PO, you know, he gets to introduce to Babu, who is his oldest friend now, and Rey senses Kylo's ship up above the planet. And she not only senses that, she senses Chewbacca, because Chewie's alive. So they have to go rescue him, of course, and they're gonna go get him, and Zori actually gives them this coin that she had showed to Poe about how she was gonna get out of this system, basically, and it's like some sort of first order coin that will allow them passage, and it's kind of a huge deal for her in that moment, because at first, you know, we've only known her for a couple minutes, and she was like thinking about turning them in, and then she heard their story, talked to Poe again, and she's like, no, 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 you guys need this coin more than I do to go get your friend to help the resistance. And it's definitely shows her character, even though we briefly got to see her, I do enjoy her character and kind of shows her true colors there. So the coin gets them onto that ship and they land on in, and then they have no idea where they're going. They start shooting stormtroopers, and a couple of troopers try and stop them, and Rey, you know, it's okay that we're here. You're pleased that we're here. She's definitely perfected that since Force Awakens, her Jedi mind trick, if you will. During these sequences, we also get some female stormtrooper voices, which was new. None of them can shoot whatsoever still, as Kevin Smith said. All of them are still a shitty shot, so it doesn't really matter if they're male or female. So at this point, the trio kind of splits up. The boys kind of head off to get Chewie and his belongings, while Rey goes towards a feeling and ends up in Kylo Ren's quarters. Here they have another Force moment where he's down on the planet now and she's up in his quarters, but they don't know where each other is, basically, and he's taunting her with, you know, your parents weren't just junk dealers, I know the truth, you want to know, you know, baiting her, and she's kind of getting like more and more frustrated with it, and so they start fighting, and their lightsabers kind of hit some of the beads that are on the planet, and so they end up in the room. It's very visually pleasing with some of these shots when they're having the Force visions, in my opinion, because like of the pulling things through. I'm totally down for this type of idea. And then what brings it to a point is when they hit the stand that Vader's melted helmet is on, and it lands through the Force back on the planet. So Kylo Ren immediately knows where she is. She's up in your room. And so immediately they're like on a time crunch because he's gonna come back. He knows where she is. So Poe and Finn and Chewie, they save Chewie, and they're recaptured, and they're basically to be executed. And Hux is going with them, and in a surprising turn of events, not so surprising, like I totally knew that Hux was gonna be the spy. It was so obvious, and he's all like, I'm the spy, and it's like, yeah, duh, but like Poe and Finn are like, what do you mean? All very good. And Hux takes them to the Falcon so that they are able to fly out on a better ship, of course, and Hux is like, you know, shoot me in the arm or they won't believe me, and Finn shoots him in the leg instead. But it doesn't even matter where they shot him, because General Pride, which is a really good character I think in this movie, does not believe Hux whatsoever, shoots him point blank in the chest. Hux is gone, and he's like, tell Kylo Ren we found the spy. Bam. Badass. Boom. It was funny and like a little petty that he's like, I don't care if the Resistance wins, I just want Kylo Ren to fail. Jeez. But yeah, Richard E. Grant's character in this, General Pride, I was really liking him as a bad guy. I think he's a really good actor and he fit in nicely to this movie. It would have been nice to see even more of him, but you know, only can do so much. But I think he was really good in this Mo. Okay, and now we are at the scene in this movie that I don't know how to feel about. I'm still processing, guys. And it's when Kylo Ren and Rey meet in the hangar. And they're kind of like circling each other. Stormtroopers are like filling in around them, and it very much reminds me of when the stormtroopers start to run over and watch Obi-Wan and Vader fight in New Hope when they're having their little lightsaber duel. It reminds me of that. So the stormtroopers are just sitting back and watching as Kylo Ren and Rey kind of circle. And they're talking more about like where she comes from, who her parents were, why did Palpatine want to kill a child, you know, those type of things. And then we get the reveal that Rey is a Palpatine. I needed a moment in the theater. Like, I was like, can we pause this? Give me a moment. Rey Palpatine. He's all like, my mother was the daughter of Darth Vader and your father was the son of Palpatine. You're his granddaughter. And I don't know how to take it. It's like, I remember back when Force Awakens came out and it was like, who is she? The girl, who? And Palpatine was one of the guesses. And I was like, no, I don't think they're gonna do that. But here we are. Granted, Disney didn't know they were gonna do that back then. I call bullshit on anyone that says that this has been the plan all along, because they let Rian Johnson go off on the curve of Rey being a nobody, being sold by junk dealers for booze, okay? They let him go off on that tangent. There's no way Disney knew this from the beginning. Like, there's no way. So it's like, it's rushed. And it's something that maybe I would have been a little bit more adjusted to, or like, oh yeah, here we go, if more thought would have been put into it. The Palpatine storyline in this, whether that be Emperor Palpatine or Rey being a Palpatine, feels rushed and almost a push at the nostalgia. You know, like, all these Star Wars fans, they remember Emperor Palpatine. They like watched him in the, well, you know, a couple of the originals, 2 of them. And then, you know, they watched him in the prequels, and that will be great to tie him into it. And it's just, maybe if there was more thought to it. And I'm not like completely rejecting it. I was just like, oh. And I like, with the second time I saw it, I was like, okay, let me see this again with an open mind. And I was still just kind of like, oh. Like, it's not negative, it's not positive, it's just like, oh, she's a Palpatine. Okay. I do feel like this moment was trying to be, no, I am your father, and it didn't have that. It did not have that shock value. Like, I was shocked that they kind of went that way, but it wasn't like, oh my god, Luke's father is Darth Vader. It wasn't that moment for me, and I think they were trying, but it's just rushed. How many times am I gonna say that in this review? It just could have been a lot smoother if there was more lead up in the previous episode. But, you know, Kylo Ren wants her to, you know, take his hand and they'll defeat the Emperor together, and Poe flips around the Falcon and, you know, like hits the booster jets or whatever, and like all the stormtroopers go flying and Kylo Ren's like still trying to like hold his place, and Rey actually does this really cool move where she like jumps out of the Star Destroyer to the ramp and to Finn, and like he grabs her onto the ramp, and he's actually wearing the breathing mask that's from Empire, by the way, little bits that you have to catch, but, and it's just kind of a cool moment how she jumps onto the Falcon and leaves Kylo Ren. And we have like some Rey processing moments, of course, and like no one knowing who she is, and you know, that type of thing, which would be kind of a hard thing to hear if you find out your grandfather is Emperor Palpatine. A little bit. So they head to one of the moons of Endor next, and that's where they find like the remains of the second Death Star, like in the middle of an ocean, and kind of shows the Senate didn't do much cleanup after the war now, doesn't it? You know, like in the Marvel stuff, they're always talking about, oh, we gotta clean up New York and everything. Star Wars, they're like, Death Star bits, just leave it in the ocean, it's fine. But this brings us to our second Goonies moment, I feel, okay? Now, I don't know if it's just because I'm a Pacific Northwest girl, but it just screamed Goonies to me, okay? They have the dagger, and like Rey pulls something out, and then they're like able to track where they're supposed to go on the Death Star. This is like finding the restaurant with the like medallion in Goonies, where they hold it up and they match up Haystack Rock and the restaurant, and that's where they like know they have to go, right? It just reminded me so much of the Goonies. I mean, there's a couple, like, I feel like Steven Spielberg things in this. Steven Spielberg did help write the Goonies, and J.J. Abrams is like besties with Steven Spielberg. So maybe the intention is supposed to be there. Maybe it was done intentionally. If not, I'm just obsessed with movies and I see references everywhere. So on this moon, they do meet a group of people on horse-like type creatures, and we'll find out later that these are all stormtroopers that deserted. The leader kind of is Janna, and she tells Finn that they basically laid their blasters down when they were ordered to fire on civilians. So very similar to Finn's story at the beginning of Force Awakens. And I kind of like the idea of there being more stormtroopers that like deserted, especially like this group where they were taken as children and like trained from a young age, and that's just a whole level of fucked up. So Gianna says that she will take them out to the Death Star on this little boat thing, but the waves are too heavy, that they're gonna have to wait till morning. And of course, Rey doesn't listen. She takes it anyway. Finn wants to go after her, and he's trying to explain to Poe that like he doesn't understand what she's fighting, and Poe's like, and you do? And it's like, yes, because Finn is force sensitive. I've had that feeling forever, and this movie confirms it. And there's some really good interactions between Finn and Poe here where, you know, Leia understands it too, and Poe's like, well, I'm not Leia. And Finn's like, that's for damn sure. And it's like, ooh, damn. So into the Death Star, we get to see Rey as a scavenger again. It ties right back to Force Awakens when she's on Jakku, climbing through the different Star Destroyers. She's climbing up the Death Star and trying to get to the throne room. And she makes it in, and it's all Return of the Jedi stuff, broken to bits and everything. I love it. Return of the Jedi is my favorite movie. Another great tie back to some of the previous films is the scores. Like for instance, when Rey walks into the throne room, it actually plays the song that like is played when Vader's kind of dying after Luke takes off his helmet. So it's just like little things like that that kind of, for me, connect back to certain moments within the saga. And I love scores, so that's kind of my thing. So Rey finds like the kind of little side room next to the throne, and she finds the Wayfinder. And as she finds it, she kind of has like a dark force vision. She sees like her alter ego, if you will. It's like the Sith version of Rey. She's got a red lightsaber that kind of like pushings out, and she's got sharp teeth, and you know, it's a really good like forced vision type moment for her. And she ends up like falling back out of the room, and she drops, I almost said the holocron, she drops the Wayfinder, and Kylo Ren picks it up. And she's like very into it at this. I love it. I think Daisy does a really good job, especially when you compare her the whole series. Like, I like her character growth. Like, she's so innocent in the first one, and like in this one she's like, give it to me, like give it to me now. And then Kylo Ren's like, the only way you're gonna get to Exegol is if like with me, and he crushes it. And so begins the epic lightsaber fight in this movie, in my opinion. So for lightsaber fights or any sort of shots in general, I'm always looking for something that's different or visually pleasing, and I love this idea of this lightsaber duel on the edge of the Death Star in the middle of the ocean. There is waves going everywhere. The two of them are soaked. Like the lightsabers are kind of sizzling because like they're in the ocean. There's waves all around them. One of the big reasons that I loved the Force Awakens fight between them in the snow so much was because it was beautiful. It was so just like visually beautiful with the red and blue lightsaber and like the snow melting. And this one kind of had the same vibe to it. Like we haven't really seen like an ocean battle like this. Like really with, I mean, you kind of like had like the rainstorm in Attack of the Clones with Boba Fett and Obi-Wan, but like this is just so different, like the lightsaber versus lightsaber, and I was very much into the whole set of it. They are battling, they're like jumping over waves, flips, all of this stuff. Janna and Finn make it out to the Death Star, and at one point he tries to run forward, and Rey like pushes him back with the Force, like trying to protect him. And this scene reminds me of something so much, and I can't figure out what it is. Like part of me was like, maybe it's Order of the Phoenix when like Dumbledore pushes Harry back, or there's this scene in Charmed where like they're battling a water demon and someone freezes a loved one so they don't get hurt. But it just reminded me like so much of something, and I don't know what scene it is, like pushing them back to protect them. If you guys have any idea, be sure to leave it in the comments. But like I said, I was connecting different movies all throughout Rise of Skywalker. Don't even know why. And it's during these moments that we start to feel the feels. I start to feel the feels. Because back on the base, Leia starts to feel what's happening. And basically Maz kind of tells us what's happening. She's like, Leia knows that this is the only way to like reach her son, and that if she does it, it will take all of her strength. And you know then and there what's gonna happen. And Connix is helping Leia off, which is played by Billie Lourd. Shout out to Billie Lourd. I love Billie Lourd so much. She's Carrie Fisher's daughter. So Leia is like holding Han's Yavin medal in her hand throughout this, and she's basically going to reach out to her son in a final attempt to bring him back, basically. So Kylo and Rey are still fighting, and Rey is getting very defeated. Like, she's not doing good. Kylo's kicking her butt, and he's just about to do like a final bring down with the lightsaber, and things kind of freeze. And I love this scene. How they did it. I love it. It gets quiet, and you kind of go back to the base where Leia is, and you can see her outline, and it's raining on the base, so it kind of mimics the rain on the base and the waves where they are on the Death Star. And she just like calls out to him, and you can hear Leia's voice saying, Ben. And like he freezes in that moment, he has that connection with his mom, and he drops his lightsaber, and Rey, kind of a shitty move, but she grabs his lightsaber and stabs him in the gut. And then in that moment, he falls, and Leia's hand drops as she's on the bed. And Princess Leia Organa, General Organa, dies. The feels. Goosebumps, feels, tears, every feeling ever in this section of scenes in this movie. And as soon as Leia dies, Rey immediately feels it. And she's like, Leia. And Kylo feels it too. And they're both just sitting there like she just died. You can see the teardrops on Rey's face, even through the waves of water and everything. And they're both just kind of sitting there. And Rey reaches out and starts to heal Kylo Ren's stomach. And he's like, almost like a, whoa, really? You're doing that? It's kind of his look and everything. And she heals him. And then probably one of her, like, their best lines together, I think, is when she's like, I wanted to take your hand, Ben's hand. And I think that's perfect for their characters, because there's always been a connection with them. And yeah, she wanted to be by his side, if you will. I'm not saying like in a shipper sense, but like she wanted to be by his side, but Ben Solo's side, not Kylo Ren. And I love that line and that delivery. And then she takes off in his ship and leaves him on the side of the Death Star. And Janna and Finn watch her fly off of the moon of Endor. And General Leia dies. They like cover her body, and they're all standing around her and everything. And this is something that I wondered if it would happen. I was scared that they would screw up the character, like have it be in the words in the crawl at the beginning, like General Leia has died, and like just totally destroy the character. But they did it in such a good way, in my opinion, how they handled Carrie's death and how they left Leia's legacy. I'm pleased with it. Of course, I'm heartbroken that Leia died, but it was done in a good way, in my opinion. I don't have any complaints with it, and the scene of her reaching out to Ben is probably going to be one of my favorites now. I love the whole Death Star lightsaber fight leading up to Leia feeling it, to reaching out to him, and dying. I don't know. I think that it was very good for Leia's legacy. And R2 was with her as she died. Leia kind of started the series with R2 and then ended our series with R2 with her. So I was already in my feelings, obviously. My favorite character just died. But you know what fucking got me? What really got me is when they get back to base, Finn, Poe, and Chewie, and they tell them that Leia's gone. And Chewie fucking loses it, and then I start losing it because he lets out a cry, he drops to his knees. Oh my god, my heart broke into a million pieces. I mean, this poor dude, all of his friends are freaking dying, and now Leia's gone too. That killed me. That was probably the moment in this movie that I was just like, dead. I'm dead. Chewie needs a hug. And then we get the movie miracle moment. Harrison Ford came back. JJ. Good job. That's a bloody miracle right there. There's a scene with Han and Kylo Ren there on the Death Star bits. And it's not a Force ghost, thank God, because Han Solo is not Force sensitive. He's not a Jedi. It's just a memory for Ben to have. And I feel like this was probably a way to fill in a gap that Carrie left. This could have very well been a scene with Leia. But because they only had so much to work with, I feel like this was a good way to bring in a parent. And thank you, Harrison, for doing it, because I thought it was a beautiful moment between Han and Kylo Ren. and it's very similar to their conversation in Force Awakens right before he kills him. Some of the lines are the same, it's very similar, and you can kind of see Kylo Ren breaking, and you know, he calls him Dad, which is like, because all this whole time he's been like Han Solo, and he calls him Dad, and then all Han says is, I know. Going right back to Empire and Return of the Jedi and Han and Leia's relationship. He just says, I know, because he knows. And then Ben, not Kylo Ren, Ben, turns around and chucks his lightsaber. I love it. I love it all. I love it so much. I seriously think like Rey getting into the Death Star and then like that bit where Ben comes back is like my favorite chunk of the movie. All of it. Like that, Leia, all of it, Han coming back for his memory, and then chucking the lightsaber. Good stuff. So we then learn that these Star Destroyers that the Emperor has built or had built or whatever have planet-killing technology. So basically all of them are a Death Star. And to prove a point, they send one out to Kijimi and blow up the planet to prove to the Resistance that yes, all of these Star Destroyers, this huge-ass fleet, has planet-killing technology. And it's somewhere within this, I can't remember quite when, but like General Pride, it's kind of shown that he's been connected to the Emperor for a really long time. He served him in the past, and he's still speaking to him now, so he was obviously, you know, I don't know, be the Tarkin of this generation, I guess you could say. We'll go with that. So back at the base, Poe is talking to Leia's covered body, and he's like, I don't know how to do this because she left him in charge. And he's like thinking he can never be like her, and he doesn't know what to do, and Lando comes in, wearing the same costume that his younger self wore in Solo, just throwing that out there. Costume department, I see you. But he comes in and he basically gives him a little bit of hope. He's like, you know, none of us knew what we were doing. We just had each other. You know, we had friends. And that's how we won the war last time. You know, a little bit of upliftingness for Poe there. So that little robot that BB-8 had met, Dio, I believe, it's kind of comes up that he has some information about Exegol because of his previous owner being that Jedi hunter. And they kind of like let Finn in on the information that he has. And then we go to Rey, and she had flown off to the Jedi Island, basically, where she found Luke at the end of Force Awakens, and you see porgs and all that, and she's burning the TIE fighter. Like, she's like, no, I'm done. Like, in true Jedi form, she tries to run away and stay on an island, and she's getting ready to chuck the lightsaber too, and a Force Ghost hand comes out and grabs it, and it's Luke. Luke in full Force Ghost attire, all in his blue shiny self and all that. And he's like, what are you doing? And I think he says something like, Jedi's weapon deserves more respect, which a lot of people thought was a diss at Last Jedi. I don't know if it is or not. I'm not sure, but they have a little heart-to-heart, and Luke basically says that he was wrong, and it's a lot of, like, you know, little bits of course-correcting things, because at the end of Last Jedi, Luke did come through, and he gave all those people hope, because he came back, and Luke Skywalker was there, the legend and everything, so it makes sense that his Force Ghost is in that state of mind. And then, you know, he offers Rey something that Leia would have wanted her to have, even though she was a Palpatine. That's like a big point, is basically Luke says that he knew she was a Palpatine the whole time, and so did Leia, and Leia still saw her soul and still trained her because she was good at heart, basically, is what I got from it. And he gives Rey Leia's lightsaber. And we get a flashback sequence, which I didn't think we were gonna get. I had heard rumors about this, but I was like, I doubt they're gonna do it. And it's actually young Luke and young Leia training, and like at first they have like the caps on and then they pop it up and you can see their young faces. It's great, good little flashback. And it's them like training and doing a little duel with lightsabers, and then Luke basically says that Leia had a vision of her son's death if she continued on this path, which could have been inevitable. But so she decided to lay down the lightsaber and that someone else would pick it up and finish her journey, or through the Force or whatever like that. So now Rey has 2 lightsabers, and Luke says that she should take both to Exegol, and that, you know, she has everything she needs, and she finds the Wayfinder still in the burnt up bits. But the question is, how will she fly off the island? All of us were thinking it since they showed it in the water, and Force Ghost Luke lifts up the X-Wing, just like, you know, on Dagobah, giving all those feels again, and the Red 5 is back. And Rey is flying the X-Wing with the helmet on, very reminiscent of her in Force Awakens, trying on the helmet just for fun. And she's flying to Exegol. So back on the base, Poe makes Finn a general because he needs his help, he needs friends basically, and you know, Finn's like, oh, thank you, yes, but Dio has information about Exegol. So they're looking up the information, it gives them some of it, and then R2 picks up an old signal that Luke's Skywalker's X-Wing, and C-3PO's like, he's having a malfunction. Oh, hey, by the way, they gave 3PO his memory back. Forgot to mention that. So R2 had some of it backed up. But it's Luke Skywalker's X-Wing. And they're like, it must be Rey. Like, Finn says this because he's more sensitive. And she's charting the path for them to get to Exegol. So then the plan is Lando and Chewie will take the Falcon to get more friends in the core worlds, near the capital and whatnot, and more backup. And what Resistance members they have will head to Exegol to start this battle. So everyone's getting ready, you get like, you know, you get the speech, you know, and Poe has some really great things like about in his speech like with Leia and our mom and dads like didn't fight for this to be destroyed and you know, stuff like that. Good speech. Good speech. And then everyone's getting ready and lifting and flying towards Exegol. So the whole idea for the Resistance, once they get through to Exegol, and there is a monstrous fleet of Star Destroyers, like, fuck. There's so many, like every movie has to be bigger than the last, right? Like there's so many. Their main plan is to take out like the tracker, I can't think of what it's called, it's left me, whatever, that will help the fleet get out of Exegol because you have to take the certain path. If you don't have that map or the tracking system to follow one of them, like they can't leave. So that's their idea, that's their plan, and they're going down to take out the main one, and General Pryde kind of catches on to what they're doing and is like, okay, put the main tracker like on our ship so that they can't like destroy it. And so like they realize this and Finn's like, okay, fine, we're gonna go on that Star Destroyer. And they're like, we're gonna land on a Star Destroyer? And they're like, oh, yeah, we're doing it. And a really cool moment is like when they're landing the shuttles for the ground team and General Pryde's like, you know, jam their speeders. And the guy's like, they don't have speeders? And it's because they're on the horses. I really liked this moment. It was like, haha, you can't jam the speeders because they're on freaking horses. And they're like riding across and then other grounds crew gets and they're trying to take out this ship's tracker now so that once more the rest of the Star Destroyers cannot find their way out of Exegol, can't find their way out, they can't do anything, they can't go kill no planets. Meanwhile, down below, we have a family reunion. Emperor Palpatine meets his granddaughter, Rey Palpatine. Dun, dun, dun. And he's like, he's not looking too good in this. He's like zombie-ish and all that stuff, probably however they brought him back or however he had survived. Yeah, he ain't looking too good. So yeah, she's having a moment and she's basically like, I did not like come to join the Sith or rule the Sith as an Empress Palpatine, as he calls her. She's like, no, I came to destroy the Sith. And he basically like starts to threaten her new family, her new friends. You know, he says, you know, Luke Skywalker was saved by his father and the only family you have here is me. And it definitely brings in some interesting vibes and tones for what family means and like family ties and all that. You could go really hardcore into that if you wanted to. So basically the idea is he wants her to kill him and then she will become the Empress. They will become one, you know, he'll like go into her and they'll be the Empress together and everything. And this is the only way she can save her friends. If she doesn't do this, like all of her friends up above in the sky fight, they're gonna die. All her friends, all her family, everyone's gonna die. So she starts to agree. At this time, Ben Solo, not Kylo Ren, love saying that, shows up and starts running through Exegol little area. And there's like choirs upon Sith followers. It's like a stadium of Sith members. Like, so that makes for an awkward family reunion. Like, hi, grandfather, never met you before. So glad all of your hundreds of followers are here for this special moment. A little weird, but Ben is like running inside towards where they are. Now, I must be like totally different from all of these girls that are like, ooh, bad boys, because Adam Driver looks damn good when he runs into this place as Ben Solo. He looks completely different than he did as Kylo Ren. Like, it's the set of his face, it's acting. Acting's great. He looks damn good. So, I I'm all for the Ben Solo vibes and not the Kylo Ren vibes. I know he got a bunch of fangirls out there, but I'm for Ben Solo. So he's running through like this temple and he like has his blaster and he's shooting. He has a couple like shots like from behind, very Han Solo, and like he's coming up on the Knights of Ren. Yay, the Knights of Ren. And all he has is his blaster. And Rey feels him there in that moment, and she has the lightsaber drawn, and they share that moment in connection. Probably why I like their connection so much with the Force. I just love these moments they have together. And I liked them last time in Last Jedi too. And she takes the lightsaber and she like looks like she's gonna like strike Palpatine down, and she puts it behind her head, and when she comes back it's gone. And then Ben pulls it out and has a very Han Solo move, like, yeah, and takes down all of the Knights of Ren with the lightsaber. I'm pretty sure she gave him Luke's lightsaber and then she kept Leia's. I'm not quite sure on those details. You can tell me if I'm right or wrong. And then she starts taking down the Red Emperor guards because they don't really do shit, and Ben is taking down the Knights of Ren. And then they kind of come together and they kind of share a look, and then they're both like, whoa, with the lightsabers up against Palpatine. I like really like all of these Ben moments, and it kills me that he didn't like go good sooner, because I really like this Ben Solo character, and it makes me sad and depressed that he was Kylo Ren for most of the series, but whatever. But they try to team up, but the Emperor kind of blasts them and kind of gets part of their Force connection. And it starts to heal his nasty ass fingers. And he's like, you know, taking from two of you will heal the one, and then he can be the Emperor forever. He doesn't need the Empress anymore if he takes like their Force connection between the two of them. And so he literally starts like sucking their damn Force souls out and starts to heal himself during this. Up top in the space/sky fight, they're not doing well. And like, this is some more really good Poe stuff. He just looks so defeated, but it's really good acting on Oscar's part. And he like is starting to apologize. He's like, my friends, I'm so sorry. And they think they're done, because I mean, we watch Snap die. He like crashes down, like they're not doing well. And then all of a sudden Lando's voice comes on and he's brought back friends and people. And Poe's X-Wing goes up and you see a horde of ships. There are probably so many Easter eggs in these shots. I have no idea where to start. The only one I know for sure is like the ghost from Rebels is to the side of the Falcon, but everything else, there are ships everywhere. Everywhere. There's just so many ships. And one of my favorite parts, one of my favorite lines in this bit is from the Final Order, and you know, General Pride is like, they don't have a navy, where all these ships coming from? And like the dude next to him is like, it's not a navy, it's not a fleet, they're just people. Which is perfect. That's what the rebellion has always been. That's what the resistance was. Just people banding together to take out the bad guys. So yes, it's just people coming to defeat the bad guys. Bam. You get some cameos here too. Wedge is back. He's in his X-Wing orange jumpsuit, but it actually kind of looks like he's in the gunner of the Falcon. And he's like, nice flying, Lando. Zori came back with Babu, so they did not get exploded. That's always positive. So Rey and Ben are like on the ground, like after being like sucked their souls out, and Ben starts to stand up and he tries to like, you know, he's weak and he's trying to stand, and the Emperor basically said like goodbye to the last Skywalker, and he flings him off. He hits like a cliff, he falls down a shaft. It looks like a freaking Last Crusade cliffy shaft thing. I don't know. That's what it looked like to me. And like Ben falls and he goes through the fog and you can't see him. At some point, like it's like the Emperor does like Force lightning up and is hitting all the ships, and you know, they're losing power, they're falling, all of that. Rey is still on the ground and she's very weak, and she's looking up and you can see like the ships being hit, you can see the lightning, it's a good shot, and she's like, be with me. Be with me. Like she was trying to do at the start of the movie, connecting to all the Jedi. And we get a shit ton of voice cameos. So many. Like one of the first ones I think you hear is Ewan McGregor saying, these are your final steps, Rey, which in Force Awakens, he told her, Ewan McGregor had the line of, these are your first steps. And now he's back as Obi-Wan saying, these are your final steps. You have Hayden Christensen saying, bring the balance like I did. There's Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon. There's Mace Windu. There's Kanan from Rebels. There's Ahsoka. There's a bunch of, there's Yoda. There's a bunch of other cartoon Jedis Jedi's that we knew from the Clone Wars series or the Rebel series, and you have all of these voices overlapping and talking to her, and they're like telling her, "Rise, Rey, the Jedi live in you, rise, rise, rise." And then the last one is Luke, and he's like, "The Force will be with you always." It's a really good moment, all of these voices like layering and everything as she stands up. Part of me wishes we could have seen some of the flashes of some of the Force ghosts in that moment, but I won't be picky. I will take the voices. I will take the clear as day, you know, Ewan McGregor. You even got Alec Guinness in there, Hayden Christensen bringing back Anakin. You know, I'll take that. I would have liked maybe some Force ghosts, but I'll take the voices. So she stands up, and she has rised. Rise of Skywalker. Hint, hint. So she's standing up, and, you know, Palpatine's like, "I am all the Sith," and she's like doing the Force lightning with the lightsaber, and she's like, "And I am all the Jedi," and she does the two lightsabers together, like crossing them over, crossing the streams, you know, like Ghostbusters, and like stepping forward, she's getting him, and as she gets closer, like the lightning goes back at him, and it's very Raiders of the Lost Ark, as he's like, his face is peeling away, and he's like looking at the Ark of the Covenant. I don't even know. Once again, movie references. And he pretty much goes like poof, and he's gone. She takes him down. This moment is very much a Marvel moment for me as well. When she's like, "And I am all the Jedi." It's very much like, "And I am Iron Man." Is very Marvel to me, but like I said, so many movie references. So up in the sky, the destroyers are going down. The Falcon zooms in to get Finn and Jannah off the Star Destroyer, the main Star Destroyer, because they stayed on board to help bring it down. And the Falcon, you know, fastest piece of junk in the galaxy, swings on by and gets them off. And as they get inside the Falcon, that's when Finn feels Rey die. And that's like the concrete of Finn is Force sensitive. I had vibes from it in Force Awakens. You get little bits of it in here, and that's like the concrete of, yeah, he just felt her die through the Force, just like Obi-Wan did when he felt Alderaan go, just like Yoda did when Order 66 came into effect, Leia did when Han died. Finn feels Rey die in the Force. He's Force sensitive, and Rey dies. She's down. And then Ben's hand comes up as he's crawling out of the Last Crusade shaft, and he's going over to her, and he like holds her, and is like, great dead eyes from Daisy Ridley too. Like, her eyes look fucking dead. She doesn't look well, and her face looks like a little sunken. I don't know if they did a little CGI with that or what, but she doesn't look good. She looks dead. Very dead. Dead. And so as Ben is holding her, he starts to heal her the same way that she healed him earlier. And her hand starts to twitch, and she comes back, and they have a moment. And for all the Reylo lovers, I'm not really a Reylo lover, but I like good Ben. I do like good Ben. Won't disappoint that. But they kiss. They have a kiss that everyone's been waiting for, and they're smiling, and that took it all for Ben. He gave himself for her, basically. And he had already kind of like, you know, he had come back from the dark side and kind of, you know, redemption. But I think that was his full redemption, was like Vader did for Luke. He gave his Force healing so Rey would come back. That's how I take it. And then he dies, and he disappears like a Force ghost, because he's a Jedi again. And Rey's just kind of like, oof, he fucking died. And as he disappears back on the base, Maz is watching over Leia, and Leia's body disappears too. So their connection, mother-son, whatever it may be, they disappeared together. And I guess Maz in this movie was a puppet. The other movies she's been like CGI, motion capture, and I guess this time she was a puppet. That's a really good looking puppet. I didn't know any difference until I read that. So when it comes to Ben's redemption, I was really on the fence with this because I was like, oh my god, they're gonna do a Vader thing, like he's gonna come to the good side, yay him, after he killed freaking Han Solo, like I hate him. But I'm not like all Team Ben or anything, but I like how it was handled. And I like I said, the Death Star moments with Leia reaching out and then Han's memory coming back. I love those moments. I love him tossing the lightsaber, him coming back and fighting as Ben against the Knights of Ren, totally into that, him fighting with Rey, into it, and then, you know, giving his life for Rey's. I'm okay with this redemption path. I do. I like it. And it didn't disappoint me either, which is really good. So as the celebration begins, you see a Star Destroyer falling behind Cloud City, Bespin. You see a Star Destroyer in the distance on the forest moon of Endor. You see Wicket, and it might be Wicket's wife or child or whatever, but it's Wicket and it's actually Warwick Davis, so that's awesome that they brought him back. You get the first same-sex couple kiss during the celebration that everyone was freaking out over. And then Maz walks over to Chewie and gives him Han's Yavin medal that Leia had been holding. Because it's like long overdue. He didn't get one at the end of New Hope, so he finally got his medal, and it's like those moments. Some of the moments with Chewie are like the hardest for me. Poor guy. Lando is like kind of sitting there and meets Jannah, and like he's like, where are you from or whatever, and she's like, oh, I don't know, and he's like, oh, let's find out. And I guess there's clues in some of the books or something that this is his kidnapped daughter. She was kidnapped and put into the First Order or whatever. When I told my dad this, he was like, he wasn't hitting on her, was he? And I was like, God, I hope not. And it's like, that's one rule that Star Wars can teach us, everyone. Before you kiss or hit on anyone, make sure you're not related. So the trio reunite, you know, Rey lands the X-Wing, and like her, Finn, and Poe are all hugging. It's very great, and happy, happy moments, you know. Yay, the war's over. Please don't fuck up the galaxy anymore. That'd be great. And then we go into Rey flying the Falcon to Tatooine, and she lands it outside the Lars homestead, the Lars farm, and it's like looks the same as it did in A New Hope. And you know, she's walking in and she finds a little piece of metal and she like slides down the sand like she did in Force Awakens, back to kind of that innocent part of her character that we started with. And she's just kind of walking around and looking at where, you know, Luke started and whatnot. And then she proceeds to bury the two lightsabers together, Luke and Leia's. She buries them in the sand, which someone brought up a really funny point, that it's very comical that she buried Anakin's lightsaber in the sand because he loves sand so much. I don't know. And then she even turns on her lightsaber, which is gold. Very cool golden, you know, she's like a ray of sunshine with her golden lightsaber, and it looks like she built it into her bow staff. I've been waiting for that forever. Like, I was like, as soon as we saw her bow staff, I was like, she needs to make that into a lightsaber. I'm all about the bow staff. That needs to happen. And some random lady is like, it's been so long, like, you know, who are you? And she's like, I'm Rey. Rey who? And off in the distance, you get to see Luke and Leia's Force Ghost, and she's just kind of like staring at them, and she's like, Rey Skywalker. And then her and BB-8 roll and look at the twin sunsets, and that's where it ends. Rey Skywalker. At first I was like, oh, I wish that there would have been more people for the Force Ghosts at the end. I wish that you could have seen more people. At the same time, like, at the end of Return of the Jedi, I always make jokes like, Luke didn't know, like, who's that guy? I don't know who that is, if they would have done that. So maybe it was better with just Luke and Leia, although I do kind of feel like because of their connection, maybe Ben should have been there. So like, you know, 3 of the Skywalkers families, maybe? I don't know. Like, if Anakin would have been there, she would have been like literally, who the fuck is that? But maybe Ben should have been there. But it was a nice, you know, end with Luke and Leia there. And Rey naming herself Skywalker has been very controversial. Some fans really like it, some people don't. I think it's very good for like non-conventional families, if you will. Like, you know, maybe blood not having to mean so much, especially with some people's situations. So I do think it's kind of interesting with that. I was actually reading something on Twitter, and I'll pop it in here real quick. The idea Palpatine won because Rey lived totally ignores the sequences where Leia saw her spirit and trained Rey, and Rey rejected her grandfather, became a Jedi, killed him, and took on the name of his enemies. They saved Rey, and she saved them. And I couldn't agree more. Okay, so closing thoughts on this movie. Did Vader's destiny of being the chosen one and bringing balance to the Force kind of become like null and void by Palpatine either surviving Return of the Jedi or coming back? Like, I guess maybe his true destiny wasn't killing Palpatine, but like saving Luke in that moment so that Luke could like go on and, you know, do some Jedi-ness perhaps. But if we're talking like balance of the Force and everything, to truly be balanced there has to be good and evil, right? So I don't know where Vader's whole chosen one destiny really stands, or the bring the balance thing. As I said earlier, I don't think that Disney had a good plan or an outline of like where they were going with this. And I think that the series as a whole, as we look back on it, is going to hurt because of that. Like these sequel series here, like 7, 8, and 9, because it just doesn't flow. I haven't yet watched Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker in a row, but when I do, I just feel like it's going to feel very disconnected from each other, and Disney should have had a better plan from day one of what exactly was going to happen. This movie was an attempt to please fans, and I'm pleased. I love the nostalgia stuff, though. A lot of people sometimes don't like that, but I like the tie-backs to the other films, especially since this is the last film in the Skywalker saga. Like, I wanted to see references to the rest of the movies. That's what I was looking for. But did they do too much? Like, too much connecting? Like, was Palpatine, like, an attempt to save it after the negativity of Last Jedi? Like, did they push it too far by, you know, Rey's Palpatine now and Palpatine's back? Did they go too far with that? Don't get me wrong, this is not a negative review for this movie. I really enjoyed this movie and I see myself watching it again and again. I just feel some aspects of it were rushed. Some of it should have been introduced into the previous movie so that it wasn't so jam-packed into the start of this film. I kind of almost feel bad for J.J. Abrams that like he had to force and put so much correctiveness into this movie because of the direction he wanted to go. Like, he should have just done all 3 movies, or he should have, like, you know, adjusted Last Jedi a little bit, or just gone Rian Johnson's way. But you can't have it both ways because they don't exactly flow together. And that's gonna be the mistake. I don't hate Last Jedi, but looking at Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker, it does stand out to me now. And it doesn't flow like these two will. And they had to correct and push so much. I am slowly accepting Rey as a Palpatine, as his granddaughter. It's still weird to me though. I'm gonna like go back and watch Force Awakens and probably Last Jedi just to like see. They didn't have a plan. No way they had a plan, but just to see if it fits. I mean, George Lucas didn't have a plan either, and it ended up Leia being Force sensitive actually worked in his favor because he didn't have that planned either. So it's kind of sad when you look back at the sequel series though, if you're a fan of the originals, which you have to be a fan of the originals, come on. In Force Awakens, Han dies. In Last Jedi, Luke dies. And in Rise of Skywalker, Leia dies. Killing off my trio. And the trio never got to be together again. That really hurts me for the sequel series. You had Leia and Han together and Luke and Leia together, but never the 3 of them together. And that is unfortunate and a misstep on Disney's part. And because of the jump in time, we didn't really get to see any of the trio, like, you know, happy. I mean, I know that would make for a boring movie and everything, but it's like we skipped all, like, you know, maybe when Ben wasn't evil, or, you know, maybe when Luke wasn't a Jedi hermit. You know, we missed those things. And I'll always be sad that we didn't get to see a Jaina Solo, because I grew up thinking that's just what happened with Han and Leia. They had twins and another kid, and Jaina Solo was pretty cool to me. But I think that they successfully ended the Skywalker saga with this movie. Little rushed, but overall, I'm a fan. I think they did it well. And that's it, guys. So yeah, we'll see how long this video is. I feel like I've been chatting at you guys forever, but I had so many thoughts I wanted to get in, and I'm probably going to be doing even more in-depth podcast, probably with discussion and whatnot. So be sure to check that out and subscribe to this channel if you want to see it. I hope you guys enjoy this review. I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on the movie, so be sure to comment them below. Bye, guys.